In this lesson, we're going to talk about some networking utilities that are really helpful for diagnostics and troubleshooting. The first one I want to talk about is ping. Now, when you think ping, you probably think sonar and the sound that's made when sonar is used. And it's just a ping, and you would get an echo back. Now, ping works the same way. What I'm doing here is I'm just going to ping an IP address. And this is an IP address that I use a lot because it's easy to remember. I know that it's everywhere. The reason I know that is that this actually belongs to a company called Level 3. And before that, it was GTE Internetworking and Genuity. And I used to work for those companies, and I know what this IP address actually goes to. And this IP address I should be able to get to from anywhere in the world just because of what it actually is. So I should be able to ping 4.2.2.1 from anywhere. And it's a pretty easy number to remember. I don't have to worry about doing a DNS lookup, so I'm just pinging an IP address, which in my mind makes it great for doing troubleshooting. I am avoiding everything other than the network issues. If I can't ping 4.2.2.1, there's something wrong with my internet connection, meaning I'm not getting off my local network. I'm pinging 4.2.2.1. You can see I've got my round trip time here. I've got 32 milliseconds. Is how long it took the echo request to get out and then the echo reply to get back. I can also ping, let's ping infiniteskills.com. And the first thing it does, of course, is a DNS lookup because we have to use the IP address. The network doesn't really know anything about host names, so it's got to be converted to an IP address. And then it's going to go ping that IP address. And again, we're getting our round trip times. And it's sending the echo request out and getting an echo response back. I've pinged an IP address, I've pinged a host name. That's all great. I know those systems are up and functional because I got responses back from them. Something else I may want to do is run a traceroute. And a traceroute is where I trace the path of packets through the network. Now, because we're using packets rather than just a circuit of data, and that gets into networking, which is way beyond the scope of this, but because we're breaking things up into packets, they can take different paths through the network. It's not necessarily common that that would happen, but it's certainly possible. And if I were to run a traceroute multiple times over, let's say, a period of days, there's certainly every possibility I could run into multiple paths through the network to get to a particular location. So what you can see here is it took me 10 hops, which is 10 steps along the way to get to the location that I was actually pinging. And if you look here, you can actually see some location information. We've got, for example, Boston and New York, and we can see this is on Level 3's network. Once we're in New York, we hop around a couple of times. We go through a core switch, and then we go to an edge router, and we end up at a.resolvers.level3.net, which is what 4.2.2.1 resolves to. I can trace route to an IP address. It gives me a sense of where the packet's going, and if I can get off my local network so I can ping, but I can't ping to a particular location, say I'm having problems getting to a website, I could trace route to that, and I'm going to get to a point where, and I'll show you that in just a second, I'll show you a good working trace route to a web address or a host name that happens to be a web server. So I'm going to www.infiniteskills.com, and we're running a trace route. We'll get the path to that particular IP address or that particular host. And then I'll show you one that's actually going to fail. And the reason why it's helpful to see a failure is because if you know where it fails, you'll know where the trouble in the network actually is. So now I've got my completed trace route. Now let me show you a trace route to one that actually shouldn't work, and I'll explain the reason why it doesn't work in a second. I'm trace routing to Microsoft's website. And this is going to take me most of the way there. And eventually, we're going to hit a firewall that's actually going to block the messages that I'm trying to send. And eventually, I should get to a point where I just have these stars. And that indicates I'm not actually getting responses. This is just going to basically black hole here. I'm going to keep getting these responses until I get to maximum number of hops, which in this case is 30 hops. So this will keep doing this up to 30 hops. Now that's what a failed traceroute would look like. And I can see here MSN.net is the last network that I actually passed through that had some identifiable information to it. Then I got into a 10.22.40 network, which would be inside Microsoft's network. That's a private IP address. So I can certainly use traceroute to figure out where I'm running into problems. Ping and traceroute, excellent network diagnostic utilities. You may find, once you get comfortable with command line and doing networking stuff, that you'll use these a fair amount. They're just very basic, very easy to use, very, very helpful utilities.